everyone, welcome back. It is now December 10th, 2018, 4:02 a.m. Alright, so this is a continuance from our video we posted a few days ago. Major earthquakes and tsunami warnings causing panic, Ring of Fire is on fire. And that was pretty much directly after that New Caledonia earthquake that then sparked a Fiji earthquake, and we had those sensors going off, the buoy sensors that we have in the ocean to measure the seismic activity and the changes in water. Now, I want you to take a look at this. We're going to go in order here. I have a few tabs pulled up, and we're going to check this out. So, in the last 30 days, significant worldwide earthquakes. These are all big boys. So, we're going to take a look at the top of this list. I have it set for biggest magnitude first. All of these have been relatively within a short period of time, especially the more significant. We had the New Caledonia 7.5 on the 5th of December. We had the 7.0 in Anchorage, Alaska. That was a big deal we talked about with the tsunami warning and the fear of that pressure transfer coming down towards the west coast, towards California and the upper states of the U.S., Oregon, Washington, and that fault line that looks like the set of steps here that everybody talks about. Dutch Sense, all those popular earthquake channels, once again, that do know way more about this than I do. But for those of you that come to this channel for any earthquake updates, that's why I am doing this. So, anyway, first, like I said, we're showing these significant ones: 7.5, 7.0, 6.7, 6.6 New Caledonia. So we're going to look at these four right here. New Caledonia, Fiji, Anchorage, Alaska, and then our 7.5, which was also in New Caledonia. So these were both on the same day, 12/5. So New Caledonia had the 7.5 earthquake and then an aftershock 2 hours later of a 6.6. So that is pretty significant. Now what I want you to do is take a look at the last 30 days, 4.5 and plus, and check out the pattern here. I want you to notice how this side of the Pacific Ring is just completely loaded with 4.5s and above, and then it kind of tapers off as we get to Alaska besides that Anchorage quake, and then it gets even more, we get gaps here on this side. So it seems like most of the activity is on this side of the Pacific, but there's a reason for this, and there's what I'm going to tie together here is in the next tab. Now you're looking at the past 7 days of 4.5s and greater. And if you notice, we had an earthquake earlier this morning. This one was 5.4 off the coast of Port Hardy in Canada, technically, and this was around just after midnight Eastern Standard Time this morning. So if you check this out, you notice it's on that fault line that is often talked about that could produce the quake that really does some damage to areas of California or Washington or Oregon. Regardless, a big enough quake in this area will affect all those states no matter what. Basically, the point I'm trying to make here is, are we seeing a pressure transfer? That has been a very popular topic on YouTube, especially lately, about how when we get major earthquakes in certain areas, the pressure then begins to transfer down to other areas. Sometimes it takes longer than other times, and then sometimes you get them right away. So we are a few days away from that big quake in Alaska, but if you guys remember, today alone we've had a bunch of little quakes in that same exact area near Anchorage, Anchorage especially. All these quakes were today. So when you relate that and you move down this fault line, you could see these were also today. And then we had this pretty significant quake off the coast. Like I said, this was Port Hardy, Canada, very close to the U.S., same fault line they share with the U.S., actually. And what does this mean? Now, this was a 10-kilometer earthquake, so it means it was 10 kilometers in depth. That's very shallow. Had it been closer to land, I'm sure there would have been some shaking, and people would have felt it if they hadn't already. I haven't looked into the stats of it. In fact, we can do that really quick if we want to. 3 people reported feeling this quake, and it's pretty significantly off land, like off the Vancouver area. You could see it's out in the ocean here, so that's understandable that only 3 people came on the website to report that quake. Now, with that said, what are we looking at here? And sorry about that. I had to actually switch screens real quick. But as I was saying, what are we looking at here is what I'm trying to say. Now, again, I'll mention Dutch Sense. Obviously, most of you know who he is and what he does. And his theory on the slow slip situation going on in California, where you're getting a bunch of small quakes in one area and then they shift down to another area and then they bounce back up. And what he stresses is that once that stops, that is when we could possibly expect a very, very significant quake. One of those ones that they talk about is due for California in the very near future. In fact, overdue, according to past historic stats when it comes to big earthquakes in the California area. Now, this is very close to the U.S., and again, it shares that same fault line that Dutch often talks about that will be the cause, or could be the cause, of the next major quake that affects California. So, are we looking at the potential for this quake coming from a bigger quake in Alaska, or could we be dealing with a situation where the more activity on the western part of the Pacific showing stronger quakes? Could that be one of those issues that we have a massive quake here that sends a possible wave to the U.S.? Or should we be more worried about Alaska getting these big quakes? And remember, now a few months ago now, we had that giant quake up in this area of Alaska. So Alaska is definitely active right now. And to see all these quakes here, which are technically aftershocks still after that big 7.0 quake that actually registered as a 7.5 at first. It was dropped to a 7. So I can only assume that these are still aftershocks from that quake. There's still movement going on in this area. And then to see just about, how long was it? That was on November 30th, I believe. So we are 10 days out from that with still activity going on in the Anchorage area and even moving south. And then we have this guy out here, the 2.8. Wait, let's bring that up again. It's 3.2 in Kodiak, Alaska. We've talked about Kodiak before, and so it's almost like you're seeing a movement down this fault line, and then in the same day we get these two quakes here, basically right between these two fault lines. So all in one day we had this major quake, which is definitely a significant quake for this area. 5.4 this shallow, absolutely. And then we had the 4.8, 10 kilometers in depth, and then a 4.2, 10 kilometers depth. And again, this was all within one day, all within a couple hours. So now there is movement in the kind of central to mid-south area of California. May not be related to these quakes, but basically the point I'm trying to make here is for those of you that follow this type of stuff and the pressure transfers, the more action that I've noticed going on here brings down a lot more action into this area. So if we can watch over the next 24 to 48 hours to see if anything pops up along these areas, then we can kind of verify that Alaska may have been the trigger point of what's causing the movement to slip down the west coast of the U.S. So for those of you watching these quakes, I suggest you watch very closely in this area here, and then if anything big happens in this area, the next area to watch would be Southern California. So not in any way, shape, or form am I saying to expect a giant quake in the California area or anything like that, although it is very possible because, again, like I said, according to stats in the history books, we are way overdue for a big quake in California. It's just interesting to see how after the Anchorage, Alaska earthquake happened, and then about 10 days later, we're getting action in Kodiak, or off the coast of Kodiak, rather, and then this fault line bringing it down basically almost down to the U.S. This is considered a Canadian quake because it's across the border, but anything south of that would be considered a U.S. quake off the coast. So basically, heads up to those that watch the earthquakes. We need to keep an eye on this area, especially this area, the stone steps. I like to call these. It obviously looks like a set of steps, but this point right here is very, very important to keep an eye on. And once again, Dutch Sense always points this out. He believes that this will be the area that will show the major quake that will eventually affect California. So just a quick update to those that were asking about this. I just wanted to post this out there real quick. And again, you could just take a look at it yourself, guys. This is over the last 7 days. All the major quakes 4.5 and above have been mostly on the west side of the Pacific Ocean, of the Ring of Fire here. And then when you back that up to the last 30 days, 4.5 and above, you can clearly see the pattern is on the west side of the Pacific. And then when you go into the more significant quakes, you can kind of see we got 3 along the Ring of Fire here, and then the Anchorage, Alaska one, the secondary aftershock of the 6.6, and then nothing by the U.S. So it's almost like as if the west side gets all these major quakes, they kind of make their way up to Alaska, and then they kind of taper off in this area. Now, we don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because again, we are overdue in this area. So could it be just a matter of time before we're seeing these giant white circles starting to hit up in this area? And that's when we really need to start hunkering down and thinking about the people in California, even though they've been dealing with enough as it is already. Last thing they need is a major earthquake. So, all right, I just want to answer a few questions for those of you that were asking about that. And that's what I have for you for now. If I can get another video out this morning, I absolutely will. If not, next 3 days, I will be all over the channel. And again, for those of you that have pictures and or videos of the current snowstorm in the Carolina area, Virginia, still Kentucky and Tennessee areas, feel free to send them to the email address. You could find that in the info box of the channel itself. In fact, I'll just show you really quick. And you can go right to the About Me section and then click View Email Address. It's Into Thin Air with two N's, and that is the email address you can use to send in any photos or videos. Videos don't usually work based on the size of them. If you do have a video, your best action is to contact me on Instagram or Twitter, and we will find a way to get the video to me if you would like to be featured in any of these videos on this channel. And that's about it, guys. That's what I have for you for this video. I hope you guys have a good morning. Wake up, have some coffee, and we will talk very soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.